Picture this: a vast library, once brimming with the knowledge of an ancient world, now reduced to smoldering ruins. The air is thick with the scent of charred clay and ash, the remnants of countless tablets that held the secrets of forgotten civilizations. But amidst this devastation, something extraordinary survived: a single, unassuming clay tablet, buried beneath layers of destruction for thousands of years. And this fragile piece of history, no larger than your hand, would one day rewrite everything we thought we knew about the past. How could something so small, so easily overlooked, hold the power to reshape our understanding of global trade, language, and even the very fabric of human connection? This isn't just a story about an artifact, it's a tale of resilience, chance, and the astonishing ways the past speaks to us when we least expect it. That clay tablet, rescued from the ashes of a burnt library, didn't just survive a catastrophe, it carried a message so profound it would ripple across continents and centuries, challenging long-held beliefs about how ancient societies interacted, traded, and even communicated. Imagine holding a piece of clay that once belonged to a merchant in a bustling Mesopotamian marketplace, its cuneiform script detailing transactions that spanned thousands of miles. This wasn't just a receipt, it was a window into a world far more connected than we ever imagined. But here's what makes this discovery truly mind-blowing. This tablet didn't just change history, it revealed a hidden network of trade routes, cultural exchange, and linguistic bridges that spanned the ancient world. It forced historians to rethink the boundaries between civilizations, proving that our ancestors were far more intertwined than we ever realized. And today, we're going to unravel that mystery together. From the moment this tablet was pulled from the ashes to the groundbreaking revelations it unleashed. Get ready to question what you thought you knew, because by the end of this journey, you'll see history in a whole new light. The fire that destroyed that library couldn't erase its most important secret, and now it's time to uncover it. The flames came without warning, an unstoppable tide of fire surging through the halls of the ancient library, turning wisdom into smoke and ash. Scholars and scribes must have scrambled to save what they could, but the heat was merciless. Scrolls of papyrus curled and blackened in an instant, their words lost forever. Wooden shelves collapsed, sending clay tablets shattering to the ground like brittle bones. The air itself would have shimmered with unbearable heat, the roar of the inferno drowning out desperate shouts. And then, silence, just the crackle of embers where a treasury of knowledge once stood. What caused this catastrophe? Some say it was the wrath of invaders, setting fire to a city's heart as conquest swept through. Others whisper of a stray lamp overturned in the dead of night, its oil igniting a tragedy no one could contain. There are even theories that the flames were no accident, that the library burned by design, its secrets deemed too dangerous to survive. But in the chaos, something miraculous happened. As walls crumbled and ceilings collapsed, layers of debris buried a handful of tablets deep beneath the ruins, sealing them away like time capsules. The very destruction that erased so much also became an unexpected protector, shielding these fragile relics from looters, weather, and even time itself. And that's how our clay tablet survived, not by luck, but by the cruel irony of disaster. While fire consumed the library above, this one small record of ancient commerce, etched in careful cuneiform, lay hidden under tons of rubble. It waited there for centuries, untouched, as empires rose and fell above it. The very forces that should have destroyed it instead became its guardians, preserving a message no one at the time could have imagined would one day rewrite history. Decades turned to centuries, and the ruins of that ancient library became just another layer in the earth until one day, under the relentless sun of a modern excavation site, a brush swept away the dust of millennia. The archaeologist working the site barely paused at first. After all, they'd uncovered dozens of broken tablets that season, most of them fragments of tax records or inventory lists. This one looked no different, a palm-sized rectangle of baked clay, its surface pocked with the familiar wedge-shaped marks of cuneiform. It was set aside with the other finds, catalogued as just another administrative footnote from a long-dead bureaucracy. But then came the moment that changed everything. A junior researcher, painstakingly transcribing the tablet's markings, suddenly sat back in their chair. There was something odd about this one. The script wasn't just the usual lists of grain or livestock. It mentioned place names that didn't match any known trade routes of the era. Even stranger were the symbols tucked between the lines, marks that resembled no known dialect of the period. At first, the team assumed it was a scribe's error or later graffiti. But as they pieced together the text, a startling realization dawned. This wasn't just a receipt. It was a shipping manifest detailing goods exchanged between cities hundreds of miles apart. Cities that, according to every history book, had no contact at the time. What made this tablet extraordinary wasn't just its survival, but the story it told. The merchant who'd pressed those symbols into wet clay 3,000 years ago had documented a trade network stretching far beyond the borders of any single empire. Here was proof that copper from distant mountains had reached markets it should never have touched, that spices from lands considered mythical had traveled further than anyone dreamed. And those mysterious markings, they weren't mistakes, they were loanwords borrowed from a language no modern scholar could place, evidence of conversations between cultures we never knew spoke. The real shock came when linguists matched those odd symbols to fragments found halfway across the world. Suddenly, this unassuming lump of clay became a Rosetta Stone for a forgotten lingua franca, a trade language that once connected empires. That junior researcher had unwittingly uncovered not just a record, but a revelation that the ancient world was far more vast, far more interconnected than we ever imagined. And it all started with a single line of script, nearly dismissed as just another bureaucratic footnote in the ashes of history. Cracking the code of this ancient tablet wasn't just a matter of matching symbols to words. It was like assembling a puzzle where half the pieces belonged to a game no one had ever seen before. The linguists who first examined the markings noticed something peculiar right away. While parts of the text used familiar cuneiform, the script also contained clusters of symbols that defied translation. Some resembled modified versions of Akkadian, the lingua franca of Mesopotamian trade, while others bore a striking resemblance to markings found on pottery fragments from the distant Indus Valley. It was as if the scribe had woven together threads from multiple languages into a single document, creating a hybrid script that served as a bridge between worlds. The breakthrough came when a team of researchers led by Dr. Amina Khalid noticed patterns in the unfamiliar symbols. They weren't random. They followed a logical structure, repeating in contexts that suggested numerals, measurements, or even names of places. By cross-referencing these symbols with rare trade records found in a dig near the Persian Gulf, the team realized they were looking at a form of shorthand, a merchant's code designed to streamline communication across linguistic barriers. Imagine a modern trader mixing English, Arabic, and Chinese characters in a single invoice to ensure their partners in different countries could all grasp the essentials. That's exactly what this tablet revealed, a pragmatic, almost poetic solution to the chaos of ancient globalization. But the real revelation lay in those mysterious place names. One in particular, a cluster of wedges previously dismissed as scribble error, turned out to refer to a coastal settlement hundreds of miles beyond the known trade networks of the time. Historians had long assumed this region was isolated, cut off from the great civilizations of Mesopotamia and the Indus by impassable deserts and mountains. Yet here was proof, etched in clay, that goods and ideas had flowed freely between them. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just a record of commerce, it was a blueprint of cultural exchange, showing how writing systems evolved not in isolation, but through collision and collaboration. What made this script so revolutionary was its adaptability. Unlike rigid formal inscriptions, this tablet's language was fluid, borrowing and bending rules to serve its purpose. Linguists now believe it represents one of the earliest examples of a contact language, a precursor to the pidgins and creoles that would later emerge in port cities around the world. The scribe who pressed those symbols into clay wasn't just keeping records, they were participating in a silent revolution, one that allowed distant cultures to share not just goods but knowledge, stories, and innovations. And thanks to this single fire-scarred tablet, we can finally hear their voices across the millennia. That merchant's ledger, baked into clay 3,000 years ago, reads like a passport stamping across the ancient world. One line lists lapis lazuli, that deep blue stone prized by kings shipped from mines in what's now Afghanistan. Another mentions cedar wood, likely hauled from the forests of Lebanon. But the real stunner, a single word referring to red powder, a spice historians now believe was turmeric, transported all the way from the Indus Valley. These weren't just random transactions. They were threads in a vast, invisible web linking empires that textbooks claimed existed in isolation. Picture the journey these goods took. Copper ingots from Oman, loaded onto reed boats bound for Mesopotamian cities, where artisans hammered them into tools and ornaments. Tin essential for bronze traveled even farther, likely from as far away as Central Asia, crossing deserts and mountains through a relay of traders. And here's what's extraordinary. The tablet doesn't just record what moved, but how. It mentions guarantors, intermediaries who vouched for deals between strangers who spoke different languages. This wasn't a haphazard barter system. It was a sophisticated network with rules, credit, and even early forms of contracts. The tablet's most revolutionary revelation. A route stretching southeast to a place called Dilmun, long thought mythical. Modern archaeology confirms this was Bahrain, a hub where Mesopotamian merchants traded with sailors from the Indus Valley. That means spices, textiles, and ideas were crisscrossing the Arabian Sea centuries earlier than anyone assumed. Suddenly, the map of the ancient world expands not as scattered city-states, but as a pulsating circuit of exchange. And here's the twist that echoes into today. These routes weren't just about goods. Buried in the ledger's dry accounting are hints of something bigger. A mention of the scribe from the foreign quarter suggests multicultural neighborhoods where traders lived side by side. Symbols for weights and measures show standardization across regions, like an ancient metric system. This wasn't just commerce, it was the birth of globalization, proving that curiosity and commerce have always driven humans to bridge divides. Now, fast forward to a modern port, containers stamped with logos from every continent, unloading goods that followed paths eerily similar to those on the tablet. The spices in your kitchen cabinet, the metals in your phone, they're part of the same story. One that began when a merchant pressed a stylus into wet clay. The real lesson of this fragile artifact, interconnectedness, isn't a modern invention. It's a human instinct, baked into our history as surely as that ledger was baked in a long-dead kiln. Let's step into the sandals of the merchant who pressed those cuneiform marks into clay. Their name is lost to time, but the tablet breathes life into their story. Picture a figure wrapped in a rough woolen cloak, standing on the docks of Ur as the first light of dawn paints the Euphrates gold. The air smells of fish, spices, and the tang of cedar logs freshly unloaded from Phoenician ships. This isn't just a trader, it's someone's parent, child, or friend, haggling over the price of copper ingots while mentally calculating the debts scrawled across their other tablets. Their journey would have been grueling, caravans lumbering through dust-choked passes, donkeys braying under loads of tin and textiles, nights spent in roadside inns where travelers swapped rumors of bandits or shifting trade routes. And always the weight of responsibility, the need to record every transaction precisely, because a single missed measurement could mean ruin. That's what makes this tablet so intimate. Those wedge-shaped marks aren't just data, they're the merchant's heartbeat, the rhythm of their survival etched into clay. Now consider the voices we'll never hear. The sailor who steered lapis lazuli down the Persian Gulf, singing hymns to the stars for safe passage. The miner's child in distant mountains, pressing a handprint into clay as their parent traded a day's labor for grain. The fire that preserved our tablet erased countless others' love letters, prayers, poems scrawled by scribes whose names vanished with the smoke. What's extraordinary is how this one artifact defied oblivion. It's as if the merchant reached across millennia to whisper, "Remember us," and in doing so, they challenge history's grand narratives. We often picture the past as a parade of kings and conquests, but this tablet reminds us that history was woven by ordinary hands that measured spices, tied knots in cargo ropes, and pressed meaning into wet clay one careful wedge at a time. So the next time you hold a receipt, a shopping list, a note dashed off in haste, think of this merchant. Your mundane moments like theirs might outlast monuments. Because history isn't just made in battles and palaces, it's written in the quiet persistence of everyday lives, each leaving faint but indelible marks on the world. The tablet's language tells a story far richer than simple trade. It's a cipher for an entire world of cultural exchange we never saw coming. Take those mysterious symbols mixed into the cuneiform. At first glance, they seemed like scribble shortcuts, but linguists soon realized they were something far more profound. Borrowed words from a language spoken by traders along the Indus River. Imagine a Mesopotamian merchant jotting down the foreign term for saffron because his customers knew it by that name, or adopting a numeral system from distant mountains because it made calculations easier. This wasn't just practicality, it was the birth of a shared vocabulary, a linguistic handshake between civilizations, and the goods themselves. They carried more than economic value. That lapis lazuli from Afghanistan didn't just adorn royal necklaces, it traveled with stories. Artisans in Mesopotamia carved it into seals depicting creatures from Indus Valley myths, blending artistic traditions across continents. Even the humble turmeric, listed as red powder, wasn't just a spice. In the Indus cities, it was sacred, used in rituals. By the time it reached Mesopotamian kitchens, it had become both commodity and cultural ambassador, carrying whispers of distant beliefs. Then there's the shocker, a tiny symbol etched near the tablet's edge, long dismissed as a smudge. Recent analysis revealed it as a stylized bull, an animal sacred in both Mesopotamian and Indus religions. But here's the twist, it's drawn in a hybrid style, with Mesopotamian cuneiform horns atop an Indus-style body. This wasn't accidental. Someone, somewhere, had seen both cultures' art and fused them deliberately. That bull isn't just art, it's proof of conversations we never knew happened, where traders didn't just exchange goods but shared the stories behind them. The implications rewrite history's map. We used to picture ancient societies as solitary islands, connected only by occasional warfare or conquest. But this tablet paints a different scene. Bustling ports where sailors swapped not just cargo but songs, markets where potters copied foreign designs, and scribbles in the margins where children drew what they'd seen travelers wear. Isolation wasn't the rule, it was the exception, and perhaps most telling, the way these connections fade from the record. Later tablets from eras of empires and borders show fewer of these borrowed words, fewer hybrid symbols. It's as if the more civilized the world became, the harder the walls grew. That makes our merchant's ledger doubly precious, a snapshot of a fleeting moment when the ancient world was wide open, its cultures brushing against each other like leaves in the wind, leaving traces we're only now learning to read. Not everyone welcomed the tablet's revelations with open arms. When the first translations were published, a storm of skepticism erupted in academic circles. Dr. Henrik Voss, a prominent Assyriologist, famously dismissed the Indus Valley references as scribble fantasies, arguing that no Mesopotamian merchant could have ventured so far east. Others, like Professor Ilara Mendes, suggested the tablet might be a later forgery, perhaps a clever hoax planted during early excavations when oversight was lax. Their doubts weren't baseless. The tablet's survival seemed too perfect, its contents too revolutionary. Archaeology has seen its share of frauds, from the Piltdown Man to the crystal skulls, so caution was warranted. But science has ways of settling these debates. When researchers subjected the tablet to thermoluminescence dating, a technique that measures when clay was last fired, the results were unequivocal. The artifact had been baked between 3,100 and 3,200 years ago, matching the library's destruction layer down to the decade. Even the skeptics had to admit this was no forgery. Then came the petrographic analysis, tracing the clay's mineral composition to a specific riverbank near Ur, and the study of tool marks showing stylus techniques unique to that era. Piece by piece, the evidence mounted until opposition crumbled. Here's where the story takes an ironic turn. Those early critics, by demanding extraordinary proof, actually strengthened the discovery. Their scrutiny pushed researchers to deploy every available technology, from 3D surface scans that revealed hidden fingerprints in the clay, to AI-assisted script analysis that proved the writing style couldn't have been faked. In doing so, they unearthed even more revelations, faint impressions of reed fibers on the tablet's back suggesting it was once stored with others, and traces of a rare ink used only by royal scribes. The very act of doubting had deepened our understanding. This tension between skepticism and discovery is archaeology's lifeblood. Remember the initial resistance to the idea that Vikings reached North America, or that humans coexisted with mammoths. Every paradigm-shifting find follows this pattern: first ridicule, then rigorous testing, and finally acceptance. What makes our clay tablet special is how perfectly it embodies this process. The merchants who created it likely faced their own skeptics, tribal elders who doubted distant lands existed, or rivals who accused them of tall tales. 3 millennia later, their record survived not just fire and time, but the equally fierce crucible of academic debate. Now we're left with a profound lesson. Skepticism isn't the enemy of knowledge, but its guardian. Without those doubting voices, we might have accepted the tablet story at face value, missing nuances that only emerged under scrutiny. The next time you hear a radical claim about history, remember this little slab of clay and how the loudest impossible often precedes the most astonishing eureka. The real magic happened when scientists turned from shovels to scanners. That unassuming clay tablet, already overflowing with historical revelations, had more secrets to give, but this time they were hidden in plain sight. Using hyperspectral imaging, a technique that captures light wavelengths far beyond what human eyes can see, researchers detected faint traces of ink that had faded to invisibility over millennia. These weren't just random smudges, they were corrections, notes scrawled in the margins by a scribe double-checking their work. Suddenly, we weren't just reading a document, we were watching its creation in real time 3,000 years later. Then came the shocker. As the team adjusted the scanner's resolution, something astonishing emerged: fingerprints. Not just any fingerprints, but perfectly preserved walls and ridges pressed into the clay before it fully dried. One set matched the size of an adolescent's hand, likely an apprentice learning to transcribe. Another, larger and more defined, showed the calloused grip of someone who'd spent years pressing styluses into tablets. These weren't anonymous figures from history anymore. They were people, their physical presence etched as permanently as the cuneiform itself. The technology behind these discoveries is as revolutionary as the findings themselves. Where archaeologists once had to choose between preserving an artifact or studying it, risking damage with every brushstroke, tools like micro-CT scans and reflectance transformation imaging now let us virtually unwrap relics without touching them. Take the case of a charred scroll from Pompeii. Using advanced X-ray phase contrast tomography, scientists deciphered its text by detecting the slightest bumps in the papyrus where ink had once been. Or the Viking rune stones in Sweden, where laser scanning revealed worn-away carvings by mapping microscopic variations in surface texture. What does this mean for our tablet's future? Every new scan could unveil another layer. Those faded ink traces might contain pricing adjustments, showing how goods fluctuated in value. The fingerprints could be cross-referenced with others from the same ruin, reconstructing entire scribble workshops. And this is just the beginning. As machine learning improves at pattern recognition, we might one day reconstruct the tablet's original storage context, which documents it sat beside, which hands lifted it from the shelf before the fire came. The implications ripple far beyond Mesopotamia. Imagine applying these techniques to the Dead Sea Scrolls, revealing erased passages in palimpsests, or reading Mayan bark paper books too fragile to unroll. Every fragile artifact in museum vaults becomes a potential trove of hidden data, waiting for the right technology to whisper its secrets. That's the true power of this moment. We're not just learning about the past. We're learning how to listen to it. That fire didn't just destroy clay, it erased entire worlds of thought. Imagine the weight of what burned alongside our humble tablet. Epic poems that might have rivaled Gilgamesh, their verses dissolving into smoke. Astronomical charts tracking celestial movements now lost to us, their data vanishing with the scribes who studied them. Perhaps even early medical texts describing remedies we're still struggling to rediscover, their wisdom turned to ash in moments. The sheer volume is staggering. Historians estimate that for every tablet that survived, hundreds perished. The library wasn't just a storage room. It was a living archive where generations of scholars debated, corrected, and built upon each other's work. Each shelf held conversations spanning centuries, and the fire silenced them all. Consider what we know was likely there. The Babylonians mapped Venus's cycles with startling precision. How many more celestial records turned to dust? Mathematical tablets from the period show grasp of geometry and early algebra. What breakthroughs might have been recorded just beyond our reach? And then there are the gaps in literature, entire genres hinted at by surviving fragments, like the Letters to the Gods, where ordinary people poured out their fears and hopes. How many more of these intimate voices were lost? The tragedy isn't just the absence of facts, but the erasure of humanity's intellectual diversity. Now hold that thought beside our lone survivor. That merchant's tablet endured precisely because it was ordinary. a routine document deemed unworthy of special protection, tucked away in a corner where collapsing walls shielded it. The irony cuts deep. The works most carefully preserved, the masterpieces displayed prominently, would have burned first. Their very importance doomed them. Meanwhile, this scrap of bureaucracy, meant to track sacks of grain or jars of oil, carries stories that reshape our past. It makes you wonder what other mundane fragments buried in ruins we've yet to uncover hold equally earth-shattering secrets. Here's the haunting question: if a single tablet could rewrite history, what might that library's full collection have revealed? Would we know the names of lost civilizations that left no pyramids or ziggurats? Might we have decoded the Indus Valley script decades earlier, or discovered philosophical texts predating Socrates by a millennium? The fire didn't just rob the ancients, it robbed us, severing threads of knowledge that might have accelerated medicine, enriched literature, or even altered the course of science. Yet in that void lies a peculiar hope. Every archaeological dig holds the potential to uncover another survivor, another clay whisper from the ashes. And with technologies like AI-assisted reconstruction, even fire-damaged tablets are beginning to yield their secrets. The library's legacy isn't just what was lost, but how fiercely we're learning to listen to its echoes. That merchant's humble ledger didn't just record transactions, it mapped the DNA of globalization itself. Look closely at those trade routes etched in clay, and you'll see the ghostly outlines of paths that would one day become the Silk Road, the lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. Centuries later, it would travel the same mountain passes, only now destined for Venetian markets. The cedar shipped from Lebanon, those same forests supplied timber for medieval shipbuilders. What began as a network of donkey caravans and reed boats would stretch, evolve, and endure, proving that trade isn't just about goods, it's about the unbreakable human impulse to connect. Consider how little the fundamentals have changed. The tablet lists tariffs imposed on foreign merchants, taxes that sound eerily familiar today. One entry details a dispute over unfair pricing of tin, complete with appeals to local officials. Swap cuneiform for emails and you've got modern trade wars playing out on Twitter. Even the solutions feel timeless. Intermediaries called silver men acted as ancient arbitrators, not unlike today's trade commissions. The real revelation: we've been having the same economic debates for 3,000 years about protectionism, fair value, and who really profits from cross-border exchange. But here's where history throws us a curveball. Those ancient routes didn't just influence commerce, they shaped language in ways still echoing today. The merchant's hybrid script was more than a practical tool, it was a linguistic melting pot. Words borrowed from distant dialects didn't just facilitate trade, they stuck around, evolving into terms we use daily. Take the Akkadian word makar, meaning trade goods. Linguists trace its journey through Aramaic, Arabic, and eventually into medieval Italian as mercanzia, the root of our modern merchant. Every time we say buy, sell, or market, we're speaking the merchant's tongue without even knowing it. The most astonishing parallel lies in the rhythm of these exchanges. Just as ancient traders waited months for tin shipments from afar, modern supply chains face delays only now. The cargo travels by container ship instead of camel. The anxiety scribbled in the tablet's margins over delayed spice deliveries mirrors today's fretful tracking of overseas orders. Some things transcend time: the thrill of a deal sealed, the frustration of customs hold-ups, the universal language of profit and loss. Now fast forward to the 21st century. Satellite images of shipping lanes crisscrossing the oceans reveal routes strikingly similar to those mapped in clay. The bustling ports of Dubai and Singapore, They're the spiritual heirs of Dilmun, that ancient hub where Mesopotamians and Indus traders once bartered. Even modern trade agreements echo the tablet's careful tallies, just with more lawyers and fewer clay seals. What this fragile artifact teaches us is that globalization isn't a modern invention. It's a story written in increments across millennia, each era adding new chapters to an epic that began when the first merchant packed a donkey and set out for distant horizons. And hidden in those wedge-shaped symbols lies one last revelation, the birth of diplomacy. The tablet mentions envoys who traveled with caravans, smoothing tensions between city-states. These weren't just traders, they were early ambassadors negotiating not just prices but peace. In an age without instant communication, trust was the currency that made trade possible, a lesson we're still relearning today. The next time you unbox a package from across the world, remember, you're participating in a ritual far older than borders, older than nations, as ancient as the first handshake between strangers who chose exchange over exclusion. The cuneiform pressed into that clay tablet wasn't just a record, it was a living language laboratory, a place where writing systems collided and merged. Look closely at those wedge-shaped marks and you'll spot something extraordinary. Symbols that don't belong to any one culture, but instead form a bridge between them. Take the numeral 4, represented by a cluster of diagonal wedges. This same symbol appears centuries later in early Aramaic scripts, then morphs into the Phoenician letter, Daleth, the ancestor of our modern D. That's not coincidence, it's evidence of an ancient linguistic relay race where ideas passed from hand to hand across generations and borders. But the real marvel lies in the tablet's borrowed words. Nestled between traditional Mesopotamian cuneiform are symbols that linguists now recognize as early ancestors of Brahmi script, the foundation for writing systems across South and Southeast Asia. One in particular, a looping mark representing the sound Shah, bears a striking resemblance to characters found on seals from the Indus Valley. It's as if this merchant's ledger captured the exact moment when two great writing systems began to intertwine, their symbols cross-pollinating in the bustling markets of the ancient world. The implications ripple far beyond archaeology. That hybrid script didn't just facilitate trade, it became a blueprint for how cultures communicate under pressure. When Phoenician traders adapted elements of this system centuries later, they weren't just copying symbols, they were participating in a tradition of linguistic innovation that stretched back to our clay tablet. The Phoenician alphabet, parent to Greek, Latin, and ultimately our own letters, carries echoes of that ancient merchant's pragmatic shorthand. Even the concept of vowels, often credited to the Greeks, may have roots in these early attempts to reconcile different pronunciation systems. Consider the humble letter B. Its journey begins with an Akkadian symbol for house, a simple rectangle with an opening. On our tablet, that shape appears modified, rounded at the corners, perhaps to match a foreign trader's pronunciation. Fast forward a millennium and that rounded form becomes the Phoenician Beth, then the Greek Beta, and finally our curving B. The entire evolution is preserved in miniature, from pictograph to abstract letter, all because some anonymous scribe needed to make their records understandable to outsiders. This isn't just about letters on a page, it's about how communication shapes civilization itself. The same forces that transformed that Akkadian house into a B also enabled the spread of philosophy from Athens to Alexandria, Buddhist sutras from India to China, and scientific knowledge from Baghdad to Cordoba. Every time we type an email or send a text, we're using tools refined in those ancient marketplaces, where the urgent need to connect across cultures forged systems that would outlast empires. The tablet's greatest lesson: writing doesn't belong to any one culture, it thrives at the intersections. Just as the merchant blended symbols to be understood, later scribes would borrow and adapt, creating scripts flexible enough to carry everything from Hebrew prayers to Mongolian decrees. That little slab of clay proves a profound truth. Our alphabets were never meant to be fortresses, but bridges, ones we're still crossing today, every time we put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. The fire that destroyed the library couldn't burn away that legacy because it was never stored on any single tablet. It lives on in every letter we write, a silent tribute to those long-ago traders who understood that language, like trade, flows best when it flows freely. Today, that 3,000-year-old clay tablet has found new life in classrooms around the world, not as a dusty relic, but as a vibrant teaching tool that bridges past and present. In a middle school in Toronto, students handle a 3D printed replica, tracing their fingers over the same cuneiform symbols the merchant once pressed into clay. Across the ocean in Mumbai, language arts classes analyze the tablet's hybrid script as an early example of cultural exchange, drawing parallels to modern multilingual communities. And in online courses from Tokyo to Berlin, it's become the centerpiece of discussions about globalization's ancient roots, proof that our interconnected world didn't begin with smartphones or satellites. One teacher in Cairo shared how her students, initially disinterested in ancient history, lit up when she revealed the tablet's backstory. They couldn't believe something so ordinary, a receipt, could rewrite textbooks, she said. Suddenly, history wasn't just pyramids and pharaohs. It was about people like them, keeping records, making deals, navigating a complex world. That shift in perspective has real consequences. Universities report spikes in archaeology program applications from students who first encountered the tablet in high school, while linguistics departments use it to demonstrate how languages evolve through contact, not isolation. Museums have transformed the artifact into an interactive experience. The British Museum's digital exhibit lets visitors decode the tablet's symbols alongside a virtual scribe, while Chicago's Field Museum pairs it with modern trade objects, spices, textiles, even smartphones, to show the unbroken chain of human exchange. Perhaps most moving is its display in war-torn regions, where it serves as a silent ambassador of resilience. In Kabul, a replica sits near fragments of Buddhas destroyed by the Taliban, labeled simply, "What burns may still teach." The tablet's educational power lies in its duality. It's both profoundly ancient and strikingly relevant. When economics students examine its tariff disputes, they recognize today's trade debates. When tech innovators study its hybrid script, they see parallels in emoji bridging language barriers. And for every child who gazes at its cracked surface, there's the spark of realization. History isn't just about the grand and glamorous. Sometimes it's written in the quiet persistence of ordinary people who, like them, left marks the future would one day read. In 2019, something extraordinary happened in a quiet gallery in Doha. The clay tablet, usually housed under glass in London, was displayed alongside artifacts from across the Middle East as part of an exhibition titled Trade Routes of the Ancient World. Diplomats from countries that hadn't shared a cultural exchange in years stood shoulder to shoulder, marveling at how this unassuming piece of clay documented connections older than their modern borders. One ambassador later remarked, "It's hard to argue about territorial disputes when you're staring at proof your ancestors traded spices peacefully for centuries." This wasn't an isolated moment. When the tablet traveled to Karachi 2 years later, it became the centerpiece of a groundbreaking archaeological partnership. Pakistani and Indian scholars, often divided by political tensions, jointly studied its Indus Valley references, publishing papers that rewrote regional trade history. The shared research didn't just fill academic gaps, it built personal bridges. Dr. Samir Hassan, who led the Pakistani team, recalled late-night conversations over tea where we stopped talking about the tablets past and started planning future digs together. The artifact's quiet diplomacy extends beyond academia. In 2022, its loan to Cyprus coincided with renewed talks about the island's divided heritage. The tablet's mention of copper trade, Cyprus's ancient export, became a rallying point for communities on both sides of the Green Line. Schoolchildren in Nicosia handled replicas while learning how their ancestors supplied Mesopotamia's Bronze Age, a lesson in shared legacy that no political rhetoric could match. Perhaps most poignant was its role in Mosul's restoration after occupation. When the tablet was projected onto the ruins of the modern library, a deliberate echo of its own survival, it symbolized resilience for a city picking up the pieces. Iraqi and international conservators working to salvage bomb-damaged artifacts cited it as proof that what's buried can rise again, inspiring efforts to digitize at-risk collections across conflict zones. These aren't just feel-good stories, they're blueprints. The tablet's journey proves that cultural heritage can operate in ways politics can't, bypassing modern grievances to remind us of deeper connections. Its power lies in specificity, not a vague symbol of unity, but a concrete record of how real people once navigated difference through exchange. That's why UNESCO now uses its image in negotiations, asking opposing delegates, if they found common ground 3,000 years ago, why can't we? The question lingers as the tablet prepares for its next journey, this time to Tehran, where it will be displayed near cuneiform records from ancient Persia. Organizers hope it will do there what it's done elsewhere, turn scholarly curiosity into human connection. Because every time someone recognizes their own story in those wedge-shaped marks, whether as a descendant of merchants, scribes, or the countless unnamed hands that kept trade alive, the past stops being history and starts being common ground. And in a world of walls, sometimes all it takes is one cracked piece of clay to show what bridges look like. That merchant's seemingly mundane ledger didn't just record transactions. It became a master key for unlocking time itself. When researchers first matched the tablet's trade records to other artifacts, something didn't add up. A famous Babylonian weight measure, previously dated 200 years later, appeared in its cargo list. Egyptian scarabs thought to belong to one dynasty were mentioned alongside goods attributed to another. These weren't just discrepancies. They were cracks in the foundation of ancient chronology, suggesting entire timelines needed recalibration. The breakthrough came when scholars cross-referenced the tablet's eclipse records with modern astronomical data. One particular entry, a darkened sun, coinciding with a shipment of Anatolian silver, matched a known solar eclipse from 3,128 years ago. Suddenly, artifacts across multiple museums had their dates shifted by generations. A Hittite treaty tablet moved forward 80 years, revealing it was signed during a previously unknown period of peace. A Phoenician shipwreck, once dated to the Bronze Age collapse, was reclassified as belonging to its aftermath. Like dominoes falling, every adjustment forced others. Historians had to rewrite chapters on everything from metalworking advances to diplomatic relations. But the biggest shock came when this revised timeline illuminated the shadowy rise of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Previously, scholars believed this powerhouse emerged gradually over centuries. The tablet's new dating revealed an explosive expansion within just 2 generations, a blitz of conquests enabled by those very trade routes the document recorded. Those shipments of Anatolian silver, they funded armies. The cedar wood from Lebanon, it built the siege engines that toppled rival cities. The empire didn't rise despite economic networks. It rode them like a wave, its growth directly tied to the flow of goods this merchant helped facilitate. This recalibration rippled far beyond archaeology. Linguists studying the spread of Aramaic found its adoption coincided with the tablets' revised trade peaks. Climate scientists correlating drought records saw famines now aligned with trade disruptions noted in the cuneiform. Even geneticists tracing ancient DNA migrations adjusted their models when population movements matched the tablet's revised chronology of border openings and closings. What makes this timeline revolution extraordinary is its humility. Unlike radiocarbon dating or stratigraphy, which rely on complex technology, the tablet's power came from something profoundly human, a merchant's habit of noting celestial events alongside cargo lists. That casual detail, scribbled by someone simply tracking seasons for shipping schedules, became the Rosetta Stone for synchronizing civilizations. It reminds us that history's most precise clocks often aren't found in royal annals, but in the mundane moments when ordinary people looked up from their ledgers or their lives and noted the world turning around them. Now, museums worldwide display artifacts with dual labels, the old date crossed out, the new one anchored to our merchant's eclipse. It's a visible testament to how one person's record-keeping can cut through the fog of millennia, proving that history isn't set in stone, but sometimes it is written in clay. For centuries, history books painted the ancient Near East as a stage for lone superpowers, first Babylon, then Assyria, each rising in isolation to dominate weaker neighbors. But the merchant's tablet shattered that illusion with a single line of script, a receipt for 20 measures of lapis lazuli, delivered under guard of the Hittite envoy. That seemingly mundane detail was a bombshell. Why would a Mesopotamian merchant need Hittite soldiers to escort goods? The answer rewrites our map of power. This wasn't just trade, it was geopolitics in clay. The tablet's cargo lists reveal a delicate web of alliances stretching from the Mediterranean to the Indus. One entry mentions tin from the mountains of Amaru, a region modern maps label as firmly under Egyptian control. Yet here it was, supplying critical bronze ingredients to Mesopotamia via Hittite middlemen. Another notes cedar shipments stamped with the seal of Byblos, a Phoenician city supposedly answerable only to Pharaoh. The message is clear: borders were fuzzy, loyalties fluid, and even the mightiest empires relied on networks far beyond their official domains. Take the so-called Assyrian monopoly on tin trade. The tablet proves that while Assyria controlled the roads, the metal itself came from at least 5 different sources, some beyond their reach entirely. A particularly telling entry records a dispute over delayed shipments, resolved not by an Assyrian official, but by a council of merchants from Mari, Ebla, and Dilmun. These weren't vassals, they were partners with leverage. When drought hit Anatolia, it wasn't just the Hittites who suffered. Assyrian bronze production plummeted too, exposing an interdependence no royal chronicle ever admitted. The most explosive revelation, a list of gifts sent to Mari's king alongside routine copper deliveries. At first, scholars assumed these were tributes until they matched the items to diplomatic archives found in Syria. Those gifts were actually reciprocal exchanges, part of a carefully balanced system where even client states retained bargaining power. One Mari text explicitly warns against upsetting the men of the tin routes, proving merchants could sway politics as easily as armies. This reshuffles the entire deck of ancient power dynamics. Forget solitary empires looming over cowering city-states. The tablet paints a world more like modern global trade, where economic ties created de facto alliances no conquest could undo. When the Hittites and Egyptians signed their famous peace treaty, they weren't just ending a war, they were stabilizing a supply chain that fed both empires. Even military conflicts start looking different. The Bronze Age collapse, often framed as sudden chaos, now appears as a slow unraveling, first trade disputes, then embargoes, and finally, when the system snapped, collapse. And here's the twist: these dynamics weren't unique to the ancient Near East. The same tablets' economic fingerprints appear in places history claims were isolated. A single line, 2 sacks of red powder via the sea route, links to analyses of residue found in Shang Dynasty bronze workshops. Suddenly, China's mysterious, sudden bronze mastery makes sense. They weren't reinventing the wheel, but tapping into networks stretching further than we dreamed. The real superpower of the ancient world wasn't any one empire. It was the invisible lattice of trust and mutual interest that connected them, written not in conquests but in cargo manifests. Which brings us to the tablet's quietest revolution. For all its lists of goods and prices, the most radical column is the one titled Guarantors, the men who vouched that promises would be kept across languages and borders. These weren't kings or generals, but ordinary traders whose word built something more durable than empires, an economic order so resilient that when drought, war, or famine struck, it was merchants, not monarchs, who often brokered the peace. The next time you read about ancient superpowers, remember their true strength lay not in thrones, but in the hands of those who kept the tin flowing. For decades, economists pictured ancient markets as primitive barter systems, a farmer trading grain for pottery, a weaver swapping cloth for tools, but this clay tablet flips that script entirely. Its meticulous records reveal an economic ecosystem as complex as any modern marketplace, complete with credit systems, standardized weights, and even early forms of futures trading. One entry details a shipment of grain to be delivered after the flood season, with penalties carved in stone for late delivery. Another lists silver loans charging interest rates that would make modern banks blush, proof that financial instruments existed long before Wall Street. What's truly astonishing is how these records dismantle the myth of the barter economy as humanity's first step toward commerce. The tablet shows societies skipping straight to sophisticated monetary systems, using silver not just as currency, but as a universal measure of value. A line reading, 1 shekel of silver equals 6 bushels of barley, wasn't just accounting, it was an ancient price index, allowing merchants from different cultures to negotiate without shared languages. Sound familiar? It's eerily similar to how cryptocurrency operates today, with decentralized networks using Bitcoin as a common denominator across borders. The parallels don't stop there. Just as blockchain enthusiasts debate trustless transactions, the tablet reveals a world grappling with the same dilemma. Its margins are crammed with witness seals, imprints from cylinders belonging to guarantors who vouched for deals between strangers. These weren't just notaries, they were human algorithms, verifying transactions centuries before cryptography. And when disputes arose, the tablet references a council of elders who arbitrated, their rulings as binding as any smart contract. Yet for all its sophistication, this system had a deeply human core. Between the lines of dry accounting, personal stories emerge. A scribbled note beside a copper shipment reads, "Delayed by bandits, unsafe," reminding us that behind every transaction was a parent, a spouse, someone's child. Another lists goods exchanged for a daughter's dowry, the careful script betraying a father's calculation between love and livelihood. These weren't just economic actors, they were people navigating the same tensions we do today. Risk versus reward, trust versus caution, ambition versus security. That's the tablet's quietest revolution. It doesn't just prove ancient economies were advanced, it shows they were personal. The same hand that tallied profits also recorded births and deaths in the ledger's margins. The warehouse where goods were stored doubled as a community hub where traders shared news as readily as they haggled. In an age before spreadsheets, these numbers weren't abstractions. They were stories pressed into clay, each digit a heartbeat from a world we're only beginning to understand. Beneath the columns of numbers and cargo lists, the tablet pulses with something extraordinary human emotion, preserved as vividly as the cuneiform itself. Look closely at one line where the stylus pressed deeper into the clay, the wedges uneven and hurried. Shipment delayed 12 days storm in the Gulf. You can almost hear the merchant's exasperation, tallying lost profits with each passing hour. A few lines down, the script changes, smoother, almost dancing, recording a particularly lucrative deal for cedar wood. That's not just accounting, it's relief, maybe even pride, etched into the surface like a 3,000-year-old high five. What makes these moments so arresting is their sheer normalcy. The merchant wasn't trying to impress future historians, they were just surviving another workday. A hastily scribbled note beside a copper delivery reads, "Brother-in-law promises repayment by harvest," revealing family ties entangled with business. Another lists goods exchanged for a daughter's wedding dowry, half practical inventory, half parental love letter. These aren't the grand emotions of kings and conquests. They're the quiet stresses and triumphs of someone juggling bills, relationships, and uncertainty, just like viewers might today. The tablet's greatest gift is how it collapses time. When you see a frustrated notation about a missing tin shipment, you're not reading about ancient Mesopotamia, you're nodding along with a peer. That storm in the Gulf delay, modern supply chain managers face identical headaches when typhoons stall container ships, the brother-in-law debt. Substitute Venmo requests and it's the same dance of trust and obligation. History stops being a distant parade of dates and becomes something startlingly intimate, a mirror held up across millennia. Now picture your own life pressed into clay. What would future archaeologists glean from your texts, receipts, or calendar alerts? The dentist appointment rescheduled 3 times, the takeout order saved in your favorites, the emoji-filled message to a friend about a work triumph, each as revealing as the merchant's records. That's the magic of this artifact. It doesn't just show us how they lived, it asks us to see ourselves in their struggles and joys, to recognize that the human experience hasn't so much changed as found new tools. The stylus became a keyboard, the clay tablet a smartphone, but the heartbeats beneath them, those remain timeless, and perhaps that's why this cracked piece of earth moves us so deeply. It's not a relic behind glass, but a postcard from someone startlingly like us, a reminder that across 3,000 years, what endures isn't just empires or inventions, but the messy, beautiful act of being human. The next time you scribble a grocery list or grumble about a delayed package, remember, you're adding to a story that began when a merchant first pressed frustration into wet clay, never imagining how far their ordinary moments would travel. That fragile clay tablet, having survived fire, conquest, and millennia buried underground, now faces an ironic modern threat, the very air we breathe. The moment it was unearthed, an invisible clock started ticking. Humidity can dissolve its cuneiform like sugar in water. Sunlight bleaches the symbols into oblivion. Even the oils from a researcher's fingertips pressed against its surface in curiosity can permanently erase lines of text etched 30 centuries ago. The British Museum's Conservation Lab battles these dangers with space-age weaponry. A hermetically sealed case filled with inert argon gas, sensors monitoring humidity down to a fraction of a percent, and LED lighting engineered to emit 0 ultraviolet rays. It's a far cry from the smoky storeroom where it once gathered dust in ancient Ur, But here's the twist: while we've become expert at shielding physical artifacts, our own era's records face existential risks that make clay's fragility seem almost robust. Digital backups of the tablet, painstakingly created with laser scanners, are stored on servers vulnerable to bit rot, the slow degradation of data over time. The 3D printing files used to create classroom replicas rely on file formats that may become unreadable as software evolves. Unlike the merchant's stubborn wedge marks, a single corrupted byte could render a terabyte of research inaccessible. The parallels between ancient and modern preservation are haunting. Just as the tablet survived because multiple copies were distributed across cities, today's archivists advocate for decentralized blockchain-style storage of cultural data. The same shipping routes that once carried clay duplicates now transmit digital scans to servers in Switzerland, Norway, and New Zealand, a globalized insurance policy against localized disasters. Yet for all our technology, we're repeating history's mistakes. The Library of Alexandria burned, but so did the 2021 Cape Town Archives fire that erased irreplaceable colonial records. Floods that ruined Sumerian tablets now threaten server farms in Mumbai and Houston. Perhaps the most poignant lesson lies in what the tablet's guardians call the paradox of visibility. To study it, we must expose it to risk. Every time the case is open for scanning, every loan to international exhibitions carries potential harm. Modern museums grapple with the same dilemma. Digitizing collections requires handling that accelerates wear, yet not sharing knowledge feels like another kind of loss. This tension echoes in our personal lives too. That shoebox of letters in your attic, the ink is fading while your cloud-stored photos face format obsolescence. What the merchant couldn't have imagined is how their practical record-keeping would become a test case for preserving human memory across epochs. The techniques developed to save this one tablet, from nanoparticle consolidants to AI-assisted script recovery, are now used on everything from Dead Sea Scroll fragments to recordings of vanishing languages. Each advancement feels like a race against time, as climate change accelerates decay rates and political instability threatens repositories. Yet in this struggle lies unexpected hope. That same globalization the tablet first documented now fuels its salvation. When Turkish engineers, Japanese imaging specialists, and Brazilian data scientists collaborate on preservation tech, they're walking the same interconnected path as those ancient traders, proving that what links us across borders might just save what we cherish across centuries. The real emergency isn't just safeguarding clay or code, it's recognizing how fragile our shared story remains, whether written in wedges or pixels. The fire that consumed the ancient library wasn't just a tragedy of its time, it's a haunting echo of disasters unfolding today. Across the globe, from the wildfires devouring California's historic towns to the shelling of museums in Ukraine, we're witnessing the same cruel pattern. Knowledge, art, and memory turn to ash in moments. The difference: unlike our Mesopotamian merchant's ledger, many modern treasures leave no physical trace to be rediscovered. A museum's digital archives can vanish with a power surge. A photographer's lifetime of documenting a vanishing culture might exist only on a cloud server vulnerable to hacking. We've traded clay's fragility for new vulnerabilities, where a single cyberattack could erase more than 1,000 library fires. Yet there's a strange symmetry in how destruction sometimes becomes an accidental preserver. Just as the library's collapse buried our tablet under protective layers, modern disasters create their own time capsules. When wildfires sweep through neighborhoods, they often spare fireproof safes and ceramic objects. Future archaeologists may find our porcelain coffee mugs and metal lockboxes where paper records perished. In Beirut's port explosion, shattered hard drives were recovered from rubble, their data painstakingly restored by technicians. It makes you wonder what ordinary objects from our lives, a child's homework tablet, a restaurant's digital menu board, might survive to tell future historians about us. The real lesson lies in what we choose to protect. Ancient scribes prioritized royal decrees and religious texts, never imagining their mundane receipts would become priceless. Today, we feverishly back up celebrity tweets while indigenous languages disappear unrecorded. The irony: future scholars may understand 21st century life better from a Walmart inventory database than from the crumbling pages of literary journals. This is where the clay tablet's legacy becomes urgent. Its survival wasn't just luck, it was a byproduct of systems. Multiple copies were distributed across cities, baked into durable material, and stored where fire ironically shielded them. Modern equivalents exist. Norway's Arctic World Archive stores global data on photosensitive film in a frozen mountain, while GitHub's Arctic Code Vault buried open-source software in a decommissioned mine. But these efforts remain fragmented, prioritizing what corporations deem valuable over the messy, human records that truly define eras. Perhaps the most profound parallel is how both ancient and modern societies underestimate what's worth saving. That merchant's tablet was preserved precisely because it seemed unimportant, left in a corner while prized texts were displayed prominently, doomed to burn first. Today, we digitize museum masterpieces while letting neighborhood grocery lists, text chains, and classroom notebooks, the real clay tablets of our age, vanish unremarked. Which brings us to the tablet's ultimate challenge. It asks us to see our own moment with the same clarity we bring to the past. Future civilizations won't judge us by our monuments, but by the everyday fragments that survive, the equivalent of shipping manifests and hastily scribbled notes. What will they learn from a surviving Amazon receipt, a subway turnstile data log, or a refugee's smartphone? The answers depend on choices we're making right now, often without realizing we're the ancient scribes of tomorrow. In the end, the fire that destroyed the library did something unexpected. It turned a humble ledger into a time machine. 3,000 years from now, another tablet may surface from our ashes, not a flash drive or a server, but something equally ordinary. A parking ticket preserved in a melted glove compartment, a takeout menu laminated by floodwaters, and some future historian will hold it up, marveling at how much we revealed in the things we never thought to protect. Resilience isn't just etched into that clay tablet surface, it's woven into the very fact that we're holding it today. Think about the odds: a fragile slab of earth surviving flames, conquests, and millennia buried under shifting sands, only to resurface when the world was finally ready to understand its message. That's more than luck. It's a testament to how human curiosity and stubborn persistence can outlast even the cruelest twists of fate. The merchant who pressed those wedge-shaped marks into wet clay never imagined their ledger would become a time capsule. Yet here we are, 3,000 years later, piecing together their world because someone, somewhere, refused to let knowledge die. What's even more remarkable is how this artifact mirrors our own struggles. The merchant fretted over delayed shipments and debated prices, challenges any modern business owner would recognize. Their world faced droughts, political upheavals, and supply chain disruptions eerily similar to today's headlines. Yet they pressed on, adapting and innovating, just as we do. That's the real lesson here. Resilience isn't about avoiding disasters, but about leaving behind something durable enough to whisper across the ages. Then there's curiosity, the quiet force that turned a broken piece of clay into a global revelation. That junior researcher who first noticed the odd symbols could have dismissed them as scribbles. The linguists who decoded the hybrid script might have stopped at the first familiar word, but they didn't. They kept asking, kept digging, because history rewards those who listen closely to its faintest echoes. And now, because of their persistence, we know that the ancient world was far more vibrant and interconnected than we ever dreamed. Here's where the story gets personal. Every time you follow a hunch, chase a question, or marvel at how something as simple as a shipping manifest could rewrite history, you're walking the same path as those researchers and the merchant who wrote it. You're part of this unbroken chain of curiosity, stretching back to the first time a human looked at a star and wondered. The tablet's legacy isn't just about trade routes or forgotten languages. It's proof that ordinary people, asking ordinary questions, can uncover extraordinary truths. And that brings us to interconnectedness, the thread tying all these lessons together. The merchant's world thrived on connections, traders bridging deserts, scribes blending languages, goods crossing continents. Sound familiar? Today, your smartphone contains minerals from 3 different countries, software written across 5 time zones, and a design inspired by a dozen cultures. We're still weaving that same web, just with faster threads. The difference is, we now have the chance to recognize the pattern, to see ourselves not as isolated points but as nodes in a network as old as civilization itself. So here's the challenge. The next time you hold an everyday object, a coffee cup, a receipt, even your phone, ask what story it might tell 3,000 years from now. What invisible connections does it represent? What resilience does it embody? Because history isn't just something we study, it's something we're living, creating, and passing forward. And if a humble clay tablet could defy the ages to remind us of that, imagine what our own fragments might one day reveal. The fire tried to erase this story. Time buried it, skeptics doubted it, yet here we are, still listening, and that's the real magic. The moment images of the cracked clay tablet hit the internet, something extraordinary happened. A blurry photograph of its cuneiform symbols became a meme overnight. Twitter users photoshopped it holding a smartphone, joking about ancient unread texts. TikTok historians staged dramatic recreations of the library fire, while Reddit threads exploded with theories about lost civilizations. Even late-night shows got in on the act, with one host pretending to unbox the artifact like a modern gadget. But beneath the viral frenzy lay a deeper question. Why does this particular relic, among thousands discovered yearly, spark such wildfire fascination when others gather dust in museum basements? The answer lies in archaeology's oldest magic trick, storytelling. That merchant's ledger didn't go viral because of what it was, but because of what it represented, a tangible connection to lives startlingly like our own. Unlike royal decrees or battle chronicles, this was a document anyone could recognize: a receipt, a shipping list, the ancient equivalent of an Excel spreadsheet. Viewers instantly projected themselves into its world, imagining the stress of delayed shipments or the triumph of a good deal. The hashtag #AncientOfficeLife trended for weeks as people shared parallels between the tablet's notations and their own work frustrations. Documentaries played a crucial role in amplifying this connection. A particularly gripping scene in the BBC's Buried Secrets of the Bronze Age showed researchers huddled around the tablet, their faces lit by the glow of multispectral scanners as hidden symbols emerged. The moment played like a detective thriller, complete with gasps of revelation. Streaming platforms quickly noticed Netflix's Unknown. Cosmic Time Machine devoted an entire episode to how the artifact's trade routes mirror modern supply chains, while a viral YouTube deep dive by historian Trey the Explainer framed it as the Rosetta Stone of globalization. Yet for every artifact that captures the public's imagination, thousands vanish into academic journals. Compare the tablet's reception to the equally significant but far less famous Nippur Economic Archives. Those cuneiform records detail entire tax systems, yet rarely appear outside scholarly circles. The difference, emotional resonance. Our merchant story had built-in drama, survival against impossible odds, a lone voice from the ashes. It's the same alchemy that turns some historical figures into legends while others fade. We crave narratives, not just facts. Even museums leverage this power. The British Museum's A Day in the Life exhibit surrounded the tablet with modern objects, a UPS shipping label beside the ancient cargo list, an emoji-filled text next to the hybrid script. Visitors lingered twice as long here as at neighboring displays of far rarer artifacts. One guest's tweet summed it up: "King's tombs are cool, but this feels like getting a text from 1200 B." See, the lesson for archaeologists is clear. In an age of information overload, discovery alone isn't enough. The stories we wrap around artifacts determine whether they enlighten millions or gather dust. That's why digs now hire documentary crews in tandem with conservators, and why universities teach scientists to communicate like novelists. The tablet didn't just rewrite history, it proved that even the driest data becomes irresistible when it speaks to universal human experiences. Now scroll through your own feeds with that insight. Those trending science stories, the ones that stick, always have protagonists, whether it's a 3,000-year-old merchant or a Mars rover tweeting in first person. We don't just want to know about the past, we want to feel it breathing down our necks, reminding us how little and how much has changed. The debate over where this ancient tablet truly belongs has sparked conversations far beyond museum walls. On one side, cultural ministers from Iraq, where the artifact was unearthed, argue passionately for its return, framing it as a stolen page from their national story. This isn't just clay, one official stated at an UNESCO meeting. It's the birth certificate of our civilization. Meanwhile, curators at the British Museum counter that their climate-controlled facilities and global audience give the fragile relic both protection and purpose. Caught between these positions are archaeologists who warn that repatriation arguments often oversimplify history after all. The merchant who wrote this tablet lived in a world without modern borders, where cultural exchange flowed as freely as the goods they traded. This tension reflects a deeper shift in how we preserve the past. A century ago, museums saw themselves as universal guardians of human heritage, gathering treasures under one roof for scholarly study. Today, that model faces scrutiny as communities demand control over their own narratives. The tablet's case becomes even more complex when you consider its hybrid nature, written in a blend of languages, traded across regions that now span multiple nations. Does it belong to the land where it was found, the culture that created it, or humanity as a whole? Some institutions are pioneering third-way solutions. The Smithsonian's Shared Stewardship Program loans contested artifacts long-term to origin countries while maintaining conservation support. Berlin's Pergamon Museum now displays Babylonian artifacts alongside Iraqi scholars' interpretations via interactive screens. For our clay tablet, such compromises could mean rotating exhibitions between Baghdad and London, or high-resolution replicas given pride of place in Mesopotamian museums while the original remains protected abroad. Yet technology is rewriting these ethical equations. With 3D scanning and augmented reality, the very concept of where an artifact resides may soon become obsolete. Imagine putting on VR goggles in a Baghdad cafe to examine the tablet down to its microscopic fingerprints, or schoolchildren in Tokyo collaboratively translating its script with classmates in Ankara via real-time holograms. The future of cultural heritage might not be about possession at all. but access breaking down the walls between museums and communities while preserving fragile originals for posterity. What the merchant who created this ledger would make of these debates is anyone's guess. They likely never imagined their daily records would outlive empires, let less become diplomatic bargaining chips. Yet their work now challenges us to think differently about ownership, preservation, and connection in an increasingly fragmented world. Perhaps the tablet's ultimate lesson isn't etched in its cuneiform, but in the way it forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about who gets to tell history's story, and how we might weave those threads together without unraveling them entirely. As these discussions evolve, one truth becomes clear. The fire that spared this artifact 3,000 years ago was only the first of many trials it would face. The flames of politics, the erosion of time, the weight of modern expectations, all tested survival anew. Yet just as the clay endured against impossible odds, so too might our capacity to find solutions that honor both the past's complexity and its rightful place in the living world. The real challenge isn't deciding where the tablet belongs, but recognizing that its journey never really ended. It simply entered a new chapter with all of us as its unwitting scribes. Imagine holding a flashlight that doesn't just illuminate a darkened room, but peels back layers of time itself. That's the promise of quantum imaging, one of the next frontiers poised to revolutionize how we read artifacts like our clay tablet. Traditional imaging techniques have already revealed hidden fingerprints and faded ink, but quantum sensors could detect subtler traces, the faintest residues of pigments, the molecular composition of ancient adhesives, even the direction of a stylus stroke based on microscopic clay deformations. Picture this, a device that scans the tablet and reconstructs not just what's written, but how it was written, the pressure of the scribe's hand, pauses where they dipped the stylus, even corrections made before the clay dried. Suddenly, we're not just translators of text, we're witnesses to the very moment of its creation. Then there's artificial intelligence, already proving its worth in deciphering the tablet's hybrid script. But current AI models are like scholars fluent in 2 languages. What happens when they master 50? Projects like Deep History are training neural networks on every known ancient script, from linear to rongo-rongo, teaching them to spot patterns no human brain could process. Soon, these systems might crack undeciphered symbols by cross-referencing them with artifacts from opposite ends of the ancient world. That strange marking in the tablet's margin. An AI could instantly match it to a pottery shard in Gujarat or a seal ring in Crete, revealing connections that would have taken archaeologists lifetimes to uncover. But the real game changer lies in combining these technologies. Quantum imaging might detect ghostly traces of text erased and rewritten, common practice when clay tablets were reused. Paired with AI, we could recover multiple drafts of the same document, watching as a merchant adjusted prices or updated routes in real time. Think of it as historical version control, where every edit tells a story. One team at Oxford is even developing contextual reconstruction algorithms that don't just translate words, but simulate entire trade scenarios, testing whether a disputed shipment delay was due to bandits or bureaucracy by analyzing weather records, political archives, and even ancient gossip tablets. The most tantalizing possibility: these tools won't work in isolation. Imagine a global network where every scanned artifact, from Babylonian tablets to Mayan codices, feeds into a collective knowledge graph. A scholar in Cairo queries the system about copper trade and instantly sees how our tablet's data intersects with shipwrecks in the Mediterranean and mining tunnels in Cyprus. Suddenly, history isn't pieced together fragment by fragment. It emerges as a living web with threads stretching across continents and centuries. What's thrilling isn't just the potential for new discoveries, but how they might reshape our understanding of human connection. That merchant's ledger already proved the ancient world was interconnected, but what if we're seeing only the tip of the iceberg? Future scans might reveal trade tokens embedded with isotopic signatures, tracing metals to specific mines or timbers to individual forests. AI could identify cultural fingerprints, subtle stylistic choices in script that reveal a scribe's origins, hinting at migration patterns we never documented. We might even reconstruct entire lost languages from marginal notes, like the way astronomers deduce unseen planets from gravitational wobbles. This isn't science fiction. Prototype quantum scanners already map archaeological sites from orbit, detecting buried structures by measuring gravitational anomalies. AI recently deciphered a damaged Roman scroll carbonized by Vesuvius, a feat declared impossible a decade ago. The pace is accelerating so fast that the children watching this video may well grow up to explore history with tools we can't yet conceive. The questions we'll answer are breathtaking. Did the Harappans really trade with Mesopotamia? What secrets lie in those still undeciphered Indus Valley symbols? How many other ordinary artifacts in museum basements hold equally extraordinary stories, waiting for the right technology to wake them? Here's the beautiful paradox: the more we learn, the more we realize how much remains hidden. That clay tablet survived fire and millennia to give us a glimpse, but it's also a reminder that history isn't a locked vault, but a puzzle with pieces still being uncovered. The next chapter of discovery won't just be written by shovels and brushes, but by algorithms and particle beams, by curious minds armed with technologies that turn whispers from the past into clear, resonant voices. And somewhere in a lab or a desert dig site, the next great revelation is already stirring, not in the grand monuments we've always studied, but in the overlooked fragments that, like our humble tablet, have been waiting patiently for their moment to speak. Think about the phone in your pocket, the receipt crumpled in your wallet, or the grocery list stuck to your fridge. These mundane scraps of your daily life might seem insignificant now, but one day they could be the very artifacts that tell future historians who we really were. The clay tablet we've been exploring wasn't special to its creator. It was just a tool for tracking shipments, a dry record of commerce. Yet 3,000 years later, it's a window into a world we'd otherwise never know. What ordinary fragments of your routine might survive to whisper stories to the future? Consider the digital breadcrumbs we leave behind. Your text messages debating dinner plans, your playlist of songs you streamed this morning, even the GPS data from your commute. These could paint a richer, more intimate portrait of our era than any official history book. The merchant's tablet recorded transactions, but between the lines we glimpse their fears, their relationships, their small triumphs. Future scholars might study your social media posts not for their content, but for what they reveal about how we connected, argued, and cared for one another in the early 21st century. Here's the twist: we're already curating our own legacy, often without realizing it. The photos you back up to the cloud, the handwritten letters you tuck into drawers, the voice notes you save, these are your personal clay tablets. Unlike the ancient world, where survival was left to chance, we have the power to choose what endures. What do you want the future to know about your life, your community, your slice of history? This isn't just about posterity, it's about perspective. When you look at your surroundings with the eyes of a future archaeologist, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. The barcode on your coffee bag tells a tale of global supply chains. The meme you forwarded reveals cultural inside jokes. Even the wear patterns on your shoes could someday hint at how we walked through our world. History isn't something that happened to other people. It's happening to us right now in the clutter of our kitchens and the glow of our screens. So as we near the end of this journey, let's return to that humble clay tablet one last time. Its greatest lesson isn't about ancient trade routes or forgotten scripts, it's about the quiet power of everyday moments to outlast empires. The merchant who pressed those symbols into clay wasn't trying to make history, they were just living their life. And somehow, against all odds, their story made it through the fire. Yours will too. The question is, what story will it tell? From smoldering ruins to rewriting textbooks, this unassuming clay tablet's journey is nothing short of miraculous. Buried under layers of ash, nearly discarded as bureaucratic debris, it defied time to deliver a message that would shatter long-held beliefs about the ancient world. What began as a merchant's ledger became a master key, unlocking hidden networks of trade, language, and connection that stretched far beyond the borders we once imagined. It proved that civilizations we thought were isolated were secretly in conversation, that scribes were innovating scripts to bridge cultures, and that the roots of globalization run deeper than we ever dreamed. But here's the twist, this tablet isn't unique. Every archaeological dig, every attic trunk, every forgotten archive holds fragments waiting to tell their stories. Just a decade ago, historians were certain the Bronze Age Mediterranean was a patchwork of insular kingdoms, until shipwrecks like Uluburan revealed cargo holds stuffed with goods from 8 different cultures. Scholars once laughed at the idea that Polynesians reached South America, until DNA studies proved sweet potatoes crossed the Pacific centuries before Columbus. Even now, breakthroughs are happening in real time. AI deciphering Vesuvius's charred scrolls, satellites revealing lost cities beneath jungle canopies. The past isn't a static monument, it's a living puzzle, and every piece we recover changes the picture. This is where you come in. History isn't just uncovered by experts in lab coats, it's pieced together by curious minds everywhere. A farmer in Turkey plowing his field unearthed the 12,000-year-old Göbekli Tepe temple. A teenager metal detecting in Denmark found a Viking hoard that rewrote trade maps. Even your local antique shop or family heirloom might hold clues waiting to be noticed. The next paradigm-shifting artifact could be hiding in plain sight, disguised as somebody's paperweight or tucked into a dusty box at a flea market. So here's the challenge. Look at the world with the eyes of that Mesopotamian merchant. See receipts as potential time capsules, old letters as windows into lost worlds, even your own keepsakes as threads in a larger tapestry. Share family stories, preserve hometown histories, or simply visit a museum and let curiosity lead you. Because history's greatest revelations often start with someone asking, what if this isn't just junk? The fire tried to erase this story, time buried it, skeptics doubted it, yet against all odds, a humble piece of clay survived to remind us that the past is full of voices still waiting to be heard. The question is, whose story will you help rescue from the shadows? That merchant's humble clay tablet survived 3,000 years to reach us, so what ordinary objects from our time might one day tell future historians who we really were? Maybe it'll be the faded shipping label on your latest online order, revealing how goods crisscrossed the globe at lightning speed. Or perhaps a cracked smartphone, its glass-preserving fragments of texts and photos that whisper about our relationships, our obsessions, our daily joys. Even something as simple as a takeout menu could become a Rosetta Stone for understanding 21st century life. Its grease stains hinting at our favorite foods, its multilingual options showcasing the diversity of our neighborhoods. If this journey through ancient trade routes and forgotten scripts has you hooked, you're in luck. Dive deeper with The Silk Road, A New History by Valerie Hansen. or lose yourself in the BBC's stunning documentary, The Ashes of the Library, which brings that burnt Mesopotamian archive to life. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe, because history isn't just about the past. It's about the mysteries still waiting to be unearthed. Speaking of mysteries, our next adventure begins in the charred ruins of another legendary library. Picture this, a single scroll blackened by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius, its secrets locked tight for centuries until now. What hidden truths will we pry from its fragile, carbonized pages? The answer might rewrite everything we know about the ancient world's greatest lost treasures. Until then, keep looking at the everyday objects around you with fresh eyes. After all, the next time capsule could be sitting on your desk right now, and future historians are counting on you to leave them a good story. Drop a comment below. What modern artifact do you think will fascinate archaeologists 3,000 years from now? A coffee cup, a subway pass, or something even more unexpected? Let's start the conversation. History isn't just something we study, it's something we're living, one ordinary moment at a time.